The Golden Boot winner of Euro 2024, 13th in the Ballon d'Or rankings, a magnificent dribble and finish in the semi-finals versus France, a clever touch and finish against Georgia, a perfectly placed shot versus Germany. Dani Olmo has just been sensational in 2024. While he doesn't grab the media's attention and is relatively underrated, he is still one of the best players in the world in his position, given his knowledge of finding advanced spaces. We will analyse his knowledge and how he finds spaces in this video. In this play, as Rafinha receives the ball, Olmo drops a little to create a passing lane. Then he opens his body to face forward and receives on his back foot. Receiving on the back foot here is very important, as if he took the touch into here, he would enter into a crowded space. But now he has space and time, and notice how he doesn't play Lamine. He seems to be in space and isolated, but Olmo understands playing that pass will quicken the tempo, and also has a higher chance of losing the ball, so instead he plays to Koundé. Olmo almost always has himself positioned in between the midfield and defensive lines. He does this because, as we can see in this play, when Barcelona's two pivots are checking in, they attract the other team's midfielders because they don't want to give Casado and Pedri a lot of time on the ball. Olmo understands this and knows if he stays right behind the midfielder, once they go and press, he will be left free. A centre-back won't come all the way up to mark him, as they usually want to stay in their position and not take risks stepping up. Then he takes a positive touch into space, but notice again there isn't a safe and clear option to play the ball. The only place Olmo takes risks and tries to play aggressively is around the box because the reward is much higher for the risk. The reward in this play would be Lamine receiving the ball, but he would be in a tight space and not very close to the goal. Here Olmo does something minimal, but is very clever. As we can see, Koundé can play Kubasi. But notice the striker. If Koundé played back directly, then the striker could start pressing while the pass is going back, putting Barcelona under pressure. But Olmo does a little fake to create space, then checks in, with the only idea to play it back to Kubasi. He does this because when he receives the ball, he will naturally attract the eyes and movement of the opposition players, and by doing this, Kubasi will have more space. We can see the striker moves back to close the space for Koundé, and now Kubasi has more space to receive the ball. Once again, Olmo stays high in the pockets and finds space, but notice what he does. As the pass comes in, he scans it while it's moving. This scan is critical for players in the pockets to be able to turn because they must know where the defender is coming from. Notice how Olmo turns with deception as well. His body is facing towards the right side of the field, but once he turns, he takes the ball to his left side. This deception sends the centre-back in the other direction, and now Olmo is running at the back line. One thing Olmo is very good at is drifting off defenders. As we see in this play, Olmo doesn't run through this gap, as he sees Balde already on the overlap, and the inside space is for Rafinha to drive in. Then, notice how he slowly drifts back. He isn't drawing a lot of attention by sprinting through a gap, but is slowly sidestepping back, and by doing this the defence forgets about him, and he's wide open in the box. Rafinha doesn't see him, but even as Barcelona plays the ball out wide, he slowly creeps to the front post and gets into a dangerous area, but just misses the chance. By being so subtle and sneaky, he gets himself into very dangerous positions. Again here, as Lamine gets the ball, there is space for a front post run in behind. But instead of making that run and attracting the defenders, Olmo almost walks forward. By doing this, he creates separation from the back line, who are dropping back to defend the cross, and now he is open in the box, and if Lamine played him here, he could have a quality shot on target. He doesn't draw attention when he moves, so defenders have a hard time knowing where he is. Here we can see that as Olmo moves to create an angle, he again does a critical scan and sees that pressure is coming. Notice how once he receives the ball, he has his body protecting the ball, but also look at how his hand is out. He doesn't push off with his hand, but just sticks it out, and this helps him maintain a little more space. That more space helps him keep the ball and have more time to make a decision instead of being pressed and rushed into a poor decision. In this case, we can see Lamine Yamal receives the ball in a 1 versus 1. Notice how Dani Olmo didn't make this run or check into Lamine, but instead backed off. He does this for two reasons. The first is that now Lamine has space to go 1 versus 1. By moving away, he creates space for Lamine to go inside or outside. Also, he backs off to the blind side of the midfielder. So if Lamine could cut in successfully, Olmo would have space to receive and drive. However, he sees Lamine in a bit of danger, so he instead takes the ball and drives. Then he finds himself in this situation and attempts a low cross, as they are harder to defend because of the speed they come at, and easier for his teammate to score, but the defenders clear it away. This play is another example of how Olmo turns so well. He backs up into the space to receive, then notices how he doesn't kill the ball, and then pushes it when he turns. His turn is almost like a first dribble, and it moves him forward and is able to attack quicker. And when in the pockets, milliseconds make the biggest difference. Another important thing Olmo does is stay away from the ball. For example, in this play, if I asked most of you watching where Olmo is, you would probably think he's somewhere here. However, he's actually on the opposite side of the field. Many attacking midfielders get drawn to the ball, but Olmo knows that staying patient will eventually help him get in a good position. By staying in the opposite half space, the Dortmund midfielders have to shift to the ball to cover that side of the field, and now Olmo is in so much space. And he is able to receive and play a good ball out wide to start an attack, all by not getting drawn towards the ball. Olmo doesn't usually like to make runs in behind, but when he does it very well. For example, here Pedri has time on the ball, and Olmo moves to create an option. He sees the centre-back come out to step to him, so he stays still for a second or two, then suddenly changes speed and goes in behind. He's not very fast, so making runs behind requires more change of pace and strategy, which Olmo shows here. If Pedri didn't have this much space, even if Olmo saw the centre-back out of position, he wouldn't run in behind because then Pedri wouldn't be able to play him. He knows Pedri has time and space, and that the centre-back has stepped forward, so he can run in behind. In this play, we can truly see how quickly Olmo thinks. As Casado receives the ball, Lewandowski checks in. Notice the second Lewandowski checks in, Olmo runs in behind. This is because he already has a feeling this centre-back will step to his teammate and knows there will be space to run into. He moves the same time as the centre-back, but doesn't receive the ball. But this level of intelligence and anticipation is incredible, and shows Olmo's IQ. Another thing Olmo does is when moving, he frequently moves the opposite way. In this play, we can see Casado is looking to go to the right. Notice how Olmo then peels off to the left and is in space. He does this because he knows that since Casado's body is facing toward the right, the midfielders will start shifting and looking in that direction. This way, if he goes the opposite direction like he does here, he will be open, and if Casado plays a ball across his body with deception, then Olmo has received in a dangerous area. Here Olmo finds space between the lines again, but this time in the dangerous square. This square is so dangerous to receive the ball in because there is always chaos. Centre-backs will usually jump, disorganised, in the heat of the moment to stop the turn. And this is where there are chances to play passes to penetrate the defence or drive and take space. That is exactly what happens in this play because Olmo receives the ball, the centre-back jumps out trying to close him down, and he flicks a pass over and it was just overhit. We can truly see the importance of a critical scan in this play. The defender is pressing very hard and Olmo looks just before and knows he can lay it to Lewandowski. If he didn't look, he would have been under intense pressure, but the scan helps him keep the ball and then draw a foul. Here, Olmo gets the ball and can easily play Koundé out wide, but notice how he instead changes direction and plays it to the middle. It results in the ball recycling back to the centre-backs, but he does this to keep possession. This is because playing wide is a pressing trigger for most teams, and playing to Koundé means they could use the sideline and force Barcelona into a turnover. But by playing into the middle, they have more options to pass to, and it's harder to press them, which helps maintain control and possession. Olmo's intelligence is evident in this play. He's once again in the pockets, on the blind side as he always does, and receives the ball with his body facing towards the field, as he doesn't have hard pressure forcing him a certain way. If he has the option, he will usually choose to have his field open to the body, so he has more options. He then plays the ball wide, and notice how he doesn't check into this space. He sees Pedri behind him, and knows Pedri will be moving into that space to offer support back, so he stays on a different passing lane. This means now the player on the ball has more options to keep the ball. This intelligence is the reason why Barcelona and Spain always have so many options, because they have players that think like this. Once again in this play, we can see how well Olmo turns. The pressure comes from here, so he puts his body in between to protect the ball. Then he lets the ball run to his back foot to turn. His use of body and the weight of his touch on the turn is special. The weight here in a tight 5-yard window is perfect since it allows him to accelerate from the defender with control. He just misses the pass, but this danger he creates on the turn is sensational. Finally, we will end with an example of Olmo going the opposite way. In this play, Lamine gets the ball and drives in. Olmo originally tries to stay in the pocket, but once it's covered moves opposite to everyone's movement, and is able to receive the ball in a good area again. He then plays it wide, and if we skip forward he ends up scoring after some magic.